Two-time national championship quarterbacks are a rare commodity. Iowa football looking to seize the opportunity. Welcome into a special edition of Hawkeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. And, of course, leave those comments and questions there in the chat. Corey Bradda right next to me, of course, for your daily dose on a regular basis from the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa football, men's and women's basketball. Corey, how are you?
I'm doing okay. This is, sometimes it's good that we have things that get in the way of the Tuesday show for weeks like this because there's more to talk about now than there was Tuesday. I mean, we could have talked about the game that happened the evening prior, the day prior, and we sure will do that over the next hour at some point. We'll kind of talk about what transpired on the field down at Music City Bowl, but the discussion on Mark Gronowski and his fellow teammate Griffin Wilde is intriguing to say the least. There's two positions of great need and a guy who may or may not have hit the portal had his head coach not left for Wazoo. We'll never know. It doesn't matter. He's in the portal now. He's also considering the draft. So fans have hope. It felt pretty low when Bo Pribula picked Mizzou over Iowa a couple of weeks ago. And my guess is, and here now I'm going to take a shot at you early. My guess is that you would probably say Pribula is the better prospect. But I do believe you have some level of bias against the FCS because of a guy like Pribula and what he accomplished at the high school level and some of what he's proven at the FBS level. Gronowski's not proven anything at the FBS level or at the Power 4 level. But we've seen success stories, one being Cam Ward. Of course, that's the easy one to bring up. Was phenomenal at Incarnate Word. Got an offer straight from a Power 4 school in Wazoo and then moved to Miami and ended up being a Heisman finalist. There are other examples, but I really like Mark Gronowski, and I don't think I'd be shocked if he ends up being a bust like Cade McNamara was. Every time Iowa gets in the conversation for a high major portal quarterback, the Cade McNamara thing is going to get brought up, and maybe it's because of me. Maybe I'm the one bringing it up, but there's reason to be gun shy. But I think there's things, just like with Pribula, I thought there were things that made Pribula a different prospect than Cade. And I think with Gronowski, just because the only similarities I can look at is he was part of an FCS blue blood, whereas Cade was an FBS blue blood. But they meant different things to their respective teams in those programs. They have different injury histories. I think those are noteworthy because those are the things that I think backfired on Iowa with the McNamara thing. But Gronowski is certainly interested in Iowa. He's there. At least he was there last night. I tried to check with my source before we hopped on. We kind of scheduled this late. I've not heard back, but he was there. I told our premium subscribers yesterday. I know there was scuttlebutt on social media. I was able to confirm yesterday that his teammate Griffin Wilde was also on campus. That was, again, a rumor out there, and maybe other people have confirmed that as well. For the record, I don't really read a whole lot of other stuff. Don't subscribe to other people's information. So that may or may not have been out there, but I can confirm that Wilde was there with Mark. And so if you could get those two guys as a package deal, wow, that changes the perception on the portal class just like that. They're still got to do other work in the portal. They offered a William and Mary defensive back who I believe was also FCS All-American. That was just a couple of days ago. He's getting tons of offers pouring in. And rightfully so. So they need work at DB, but they certainly need work at quarterback, wide receiver, probably O-line. But the fact that you get these two kids to campus is a big win, and they may not come as a package deal. Based on what I was told, Griffin Wilde is going to be taking other visits, barring some unforeseen change. Maybe they get him to commit on the spot, but I was told that Wilde will likely be going other places to visit, and Gronowski could as well. Although I'm more hopeful that maybe Gronowski settles on Iowa without visiting any other high major schools. But some of that's just speculation. But these things move fast, Mark, as you know. And with Jimmy Rogers, right? It's the name of the coach that headed from SDSU to Wazoo. There are a lot of players following him. And I was told on good authority that Wazoo was interested in Gronowski. Rogers would love to bring in a sixth-year quarterback to play for the Cougs. But Iowa would love him as well. He's got strong ties to the Hawkeyes. He was recruited out of high school by Iowa, who's recruited out of high school by Tim Lester when Tim Lester was at Western Michigan. His dad, Gronowski's dad, was a really good quarterback for Drake University in the heart of central Iowa. So there's tons of connections. It's almost like a match made in heaven because of all of those things and the need for a quarterback. I mean, I think Monday showed, and it changed my opinion a little bit on where Iowa stands. I'm uncomfortable now. I wasn't like, I'm not giving up on Brendan Sullivan, but I'm uncomfortable with how poor the offense looked in the second half in comparison to the first half. That's what concerns me. I just, and the talk afterwards, we had a conversation with Coach Patterson. I had a conversation with Tom Kakert. Is Brendan a different quarterback under pressure? And some guys do. They don't like the pressure. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but I thought Brendan was really good in that first half. Made some really timely throws. Had a beautiful throw down one of the boundaries to Addison Estringa for a 19-yard gain. They were running the ball well, but when one thing goes away, the other goes away, and that makes sense for the Iowa offense. It's always going to be predicated on the run as long as Kirk is here, but it was a rough second half offensively, and they blew a double-digit lead for the third time this year.
So, Corey, I think right off the top, we need to set the record straight and clarify something in my position on FCS football.
Okay.
So my position is that I don't get an opportunity to watch it and cover it. So there's a difference between having some type of disrespect for those players or those teams. That's not the case. I am understanding of the number of players that are able to go directly from the FCS. And now, of course, with the transfer portal era, it's going to be much different because most of these players will filter like a Cam Ward through FBS and Power 5 play. But before the transfer portal, many FCS players obviously making it all the way to the NFL on a regular basis. So it's not any type of disrespect that I have toward the FCS in any way. It's just I don't have the opportunity to cover it. And therefore, I can't evaluate those players because I don't watch them. And of course, Max Brosmer, who we saw win a bowl game for Minnesota last night, would be the latest Big Ten edition of a successful record-setting FCS quarterback who I believe won their version of the Heisman Trophy and turned in a nice season with Minnesota.
Yeah, so Brosmer's a success story. The reason I bring that up is I feel like sometimes you downplay FCS talent as opposed to you maybe put on a pedestal guys who are higher ranked. Well, 4- and 5-star kids out of high school. You don't cover high school football, but you still think, it seems like to me you think more highly of kids who got higher recruiting buzz than maybe kids who accomplished more at the FCS level.
Not individually, but in mass, the record shows that it's more likely that higher rated talent at the high school level is going to be more successful. That's just obvious.
Than FCS accomplished transfers?
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. I've never made that comparison.
Okay. Well,
and I've never even really seen enough of, nobody's seen enough of Bo Prabula as a quarterback that runs the team as the starting quarterback to even make an evaluation there. I've seen him play about as much as anyone because I watch Penn State. And so I can't make that comparison between he and Gronowski. And again, to your point, Brosmer, wasn't like he was an All-American this year, but he was a highly productive quarterback. I think he probably is a top 5 or 6 Big Ten quarterback this year.
I would like to know, I've not been able to find really anything solid on draft stock for Gronowski. I'd be curious because, that's the word on the street that he's weighing. Well, he's in the portal, but he's also weighing the NFL draft. So, like, if he decides to stay in the draft, where is he? I can't find anything substantial that gives me an indicator as to where he may or may not be drafted. So if somebody has that and they found a mock draft, any mock draft, not by, Joe Blow, but some somewhat familiar mock draft with Gronowski rated, I'd be curious because there's an indicator right there, right? If NFL scouts like him, I know it's somewhat of a different game now, but if NFL scouts like him and Iowa can land him, phenomenal. And Caden McNamara wasn't on any draft boards, I don't think, when he got here. He's coming off injury too. That's the other part of it. I mentioned that at the outset. Now, Gronowski did tear his ACL. Mark, you'll recall in 2022, Iowa played them. It was 7-3. Iowa won with a field goal and 2 safeties. That was not a great offensive performance for the Jacks, but they've been phenomenal. They've won 2 national championships since he's been there. But what happened with the FCS during COVID is they didn't play in 2020. Then they played 2 seasons in 2021, spring and fall. He tears his ACL late in the spring season, doesn't play in the fall. They end up, Jordan Oladokin leads them to a successful season. He graduates, and then Gronowski takes back over. But that's been a while. He's been really good since then. So, guys heal from serious injuries, serious knee injuries differently. And, Cade, you could argue, never really, he's proven to be injury prone. He's looking for a home as well via the portal. But I think Gronowski is a different story. And he's also proven that he's more mobile than Cade McNamara ever was. He's rushed for 1,700 yards on the ground over the course of basically 4 seasons. Mark, I'd say that's pretty good mobility. Now, I know it's FCS, but that's pretty good mobility because, FCS, they count sacks the same as they do in the FBS. It still counts against your rushing totals. So he's a above average guy on the ground, probably not quite as mobile as Brendan Sullivan, but he's got a better arm. He's got a better arm than Cade McNamara did. Now, he had talent around him. That's the other link in parallels you can bring up with Gronowski and Cade, is they both had phenomenal offensive talent around them. Obviously, Gronowski, we're comparing the offensive talent at South Dakota State to the rest of the league that they play against, the rest of the competition at that level. But at the same time, I think if you look at these two guys on tape, the differences stand way out, and Gronowski would be a bigger land. And, getting Griffin Wilde, who I think he ended up with over 1,200 yards this season, or close to 1,200 yards this season through the air, that would be huge. And Gronowski's also, he's from same area that Tim Lester's from, suburban Chicago. I don't remember what towns, but kind of on the outskirts, southwest side of Chicago. And so there's a connection there. So I think there's also this feeling right now that this is Iowa's last chance. And I don't think that's realistic. I don't think it's their last chance to land a decent quarterback in the portal, because other guys will enter. Hey, we haven't even finished bowl season yet. There's always a chance guys leave, or a coach leaves, and all of a sudden you get another 30-day window for players to enter the portal. But you don't want to have to rely on that. I would think Iowa's throwing every dime it has to spend on these two guys. Now, you probably can't do that fully to that extent. Like, you still need to have some NIL funding for a DB and probably an O-lineman, but you can't hold back. For quarterback funding, you're throwing everything at Gronowski, whether you think it's worth it or not. Because you can't, what's the benefit of holding on to funding heading into next season unless you want to can you build up funding for the 2026 class? I guess you could maybe do that, but they need a quarterback now. I think the Music City Bowl proved they should not be satisfied with where they are for arm talent. And we don't know where Jimmy Sullivan's going to be. Maybe he'll end up being the starter in year 1. I think that's unlikely. And I think it's unlikely Hank Brown is the starter. So if we're not sold on Brendan Sullivan, you got to go all in on a quarterback. And this is probably as good as it's going to get.
I think they're in the same place in a certain sense than they were at this time last year, when they had one experienced, proven quarterback commodity in Cade McNamara, and then they went, of course, and added Brendan Sullivan, and it's a good thing that they did. So the room right now stands as Brendan Sullivan, Jimmy Sullivan, Jackson Stratton, Hank Brown, correct?
Plus Pat Fitzgerald's son, Ryan Fitzgerald, who's a walk-on just like Stratton. So that's a big room. You have 2 preferred walk-ons, assuming Stratton sticks around. That would be my only thought. But Tim Lester said here the other day before the bowl game that he's fine with a bunch of guys in that room. So he doesn't think that will take away development from any individual player. I think it was really positive that they got Jimmy Sullivan and Hank Brown in there for bowl prep, because that just puts Jimmy Sullivan on a faster track. And, they've never been anywhere close to being able to start a true freshman. But with the quarterbacks finally having an actual quarterbacks coach and having him enrolled early, plus for bowl prep, I mean, why couldn't Jimmy Sullivan compete for the starting job in August if he's as good as people hope he is? And I said the same thing about some of the guys that have come and gone. James Rezar, Marco Linez, Even Carson May was a 4-star from some pundits, and he's not even sniffed the field at the lower FCS level. But obviously, Tim Lester likes Jimmy Sullivan, and he honored the scholarship, and he's went out there and watched him throw. He's excited about him. So that's all positive. You just want as much competition in that room as possible. And, finally, a year into the Lester offense, you would think guys are going to be comfortable. Like Jimmy Sullivan should be comfortable. Hank Brown by August should be comfortable. Brendan should be comfortable. Stratton should be comfortable. But getting a guy who's as accomplished and decorated as Mark Gronowski, here's a guy who, Mark, and these are some impressive numbers, albeit at the FCS level. A 2-time national champion, Walter Payton Award for top FCS offensive player in 2023. He was a finalist again this year. He's also won Missouri Valley Conference Offensive Player of the Year twice, including as a true freshman in that truncated 2020/2021 season. And again, for people that don't understand FCS football, that is by far the best conference in the country, year in and year out. It was North Dakota State that dominated the league. Now it's South Dakota State dominating the league. And you've had other really good teams like a UNI that have been part of the upper echelon of FCS football. So, yeah, all positive. And let's see here. I don't have any other notes here besides, just the connection to Lester. There's lots of so T Hink just tweeted Griffin is gone. Something just happened that I'm missing. Let's see if something just happened. Something just probably broke on Twitter as we're talking here. Let's see. I don't see anything yet, but I do. Griffin Wilde has committed to Northwestern. So there you go. Of course that's going to happen during the middle of our show, Mark.
There it is.
So that's what I said when I said that I still think there's a greater chance that Iowa were to land Gronowski than Wilde. This is why. Now, I didn't know it was going to be this fast, but we said just a few minutes ago, things move fast. And yes, just here 7 minutes ago, former South Dakota State wide receiver Griffin Wilde has committed to Northwestern. But they did have him on campus. My guess is perhaps he went right out to Northwestern, right out to Evanston after his trip to Iowa City and committed on the spot. That's my guess, but I've not heard that definitively. But I'm not shocked by this. It's disappointing. Not shocked. If Gronowski ends up going elsewhere, then I think then we have it. We go from like after the Perbula stuff, like panic mode is probably like a 4. I'm not panicking yet after that. I'm concerned, not panicking. If Gronowski goes elsewhere along with Wilde, which Wilde's already committed, then my panic meter is at like a 7. Then I think there's reason for serious concern because they could go into next year with the room they have. They can do that, but there's serious reason for concern there.
Okay, so this is my gauge on trying to get a grasp on how good Gronowski probably will be. Again, I'm going to go back to the Brosmer comparison, not because of style of play, but because of the obvious that they played and excelled at the FCS level. So Brosmer produced the way he did this year, which was an 8-5 football team, really good quarterback, good numbers for the most part. My take on he versus the guy that he replaced, Ethan Kalkimanis, was that he didn't have anywhere near the arm strength, although he is a pro prospect, Brosmer, not the arm strength of Kalkimanis, but better command of the offense, student of the game, really smart, and we saw that this year. Operated the offense to a T, really knew what he was doing there. Now, in watching him play, he is a definitive pocket passer. Well, if Gronowski has probably a stronger arm than Brosmer, and he's obviously a better runner, probably somewhere, like you said, somewhere between maybe Sullivan and McNamara, then you're getting an upgrade. You're getting possibly an even better player than what we saw out of Max Brosmer this year.
Yeah, I think Gronowski's probably closer to Sullivan than McNamara, especially after McNamara's injuries. And what I like about Mark, and I have not shared really any. First of all, I haven't really broke down his tape. I went back and watched some SDSU film over the past season. And the one thing that stands out with Mark is he doesn't appear to get rattled. Now, he's going to be going up against a different level of defensive linemen coming at him, but he's also going to have what we would think to be a better offensive line. The guy does not get rattled. He's fearless when he takes off. And and he throws with excellent touch, but he's also got a big enough arm. And I think he's substantially better than anybody that they've been after, with the exception maybe being Prbula, but he's more accomplished than Prbula at the level that he played at. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if Prbula was playing at South Dakota State, he may be as decorated, because I think he's really good. He's mobile. He's probably even a little bit more mobile than Gronowski. I think Gronowski may actually be, I don't know size-wise how those two guys compare, but Gronowski looks like he's built. Like it looks like he plays and looks like a tough guy.
6'3", 230.
Yeah, he's a big guy. That's a big quarterback, Mark. Now, he's not big like Deacon Hill. He's not rumbling down the field or tumbling or whatever. But
he's Drew Aller. Those are Drew Aller's dimensions.
So now that Wilde is gone, and again, Iowa still could use a receiver in the portal. They could still use a DB. But now that Wilde's off to Northwestern as we were recording this, I mean, you got to throw everything you have at Gronowski. Everything you have. The one thing you don't throw at him, okay? You do not throw a guarantee. You do not guarantee the starting role. You cannot make that mistake. And I'm not saying Iowa did that with Cade McNamara, but you do not do that with anyone, okay? With anyone. And you also don't guarantee money that's not there. But, if they don't get Gronowski, and the narrative erupts that once again it wasn't about NIL, then what's it about? Is it really about we don't believe Lester's the guy? Because that was the narrative after Prbula went to Missouri, that it's not about money. Iowa was competitive with money. Well, then what is it about? Because, I mean, Lester's offense should be fairly quarterback friendly. I think for a mobile guy, which Gronowski is, it gives an opportunity to showcase your feet. But, I mean, they went from being bottom feeders in the FBS offensively to being not tremendous in total offense, but very competitive with scoring offense and elite on the ground. They did. Until they lost Caleb Johnson, they were elite on the ground. Now, how much you want to give credit to Tim Lester on that, we can debate that, but that's tangible proof that you can present to any offensive player and say, look at the improvement we made in just year one.
Yeah, if you want to take that angle, I think that's a valid angle to take, because I don't think the issue is Tim Lester. If there is an issue with a particular player, specifically quarterback, wide receiver, coming to this offense, it's about maybe the talent around them not being what they would consider to be on par with some other options that they have.
Northwestern, though?
Well, not Northwestern. No.
Not for Gronowski. Now, give Northwestern credit. They seem to land guys in the portal. Have you noticed that? Whether it's Pat Fitzgerald or the new guy, they land portal players. How do they get A.J. Henning and Peyton Ramsey and Preston Stone from SMU, and they just land Wilde? How are they getting guys?
It's a great school.
I was told they offered Iowa's former long snapper, who was at Akron for a while and just transferred to Northwestern. I was told he got a bit of a bag. Not the bag that a quarterback's going to get, but when you're handing out long snapper NIL money, then that tells me you got some money out there in Northwestern.
I would think that their alumni base is rather wealthy. And
I'm
also
sure
David Braun is pretty aggressive and pretty impressive.
And that makes me wonder, have we underestimated the value that NIL serves to programs like Northwestern, Duke, Stanford? You know what I'm saying? Like these schools that probably have very wealthy alumni, but yet have been limited because of academic requirements.
Yeah.
What strings can be pulled? There was already that chatter about the Duke transfer quarterback that came in from Tulane and him getting $5 million or whatever it was. If that's true, then $8 million?
That's what I heard.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if that's true, but think about it, Mark. If that's true, if they have the money to offer him, then what prevents Duke from becoming a power? What prevents them from becoming a power if they have that money?
You just alluded to the magic key there is, do the Stanfords and Dukes of the world, is there a crossover between these billions of dollars of endowment and everything else that they have crossing into the athletic arena, or do they keep those completely separate?
Well, they're doing a lot. Like I said, both those schools have done better in the portal than Iowa has. Duke and Northwestern. And Iowa's a better program. So, Northwestern, here's the thing about Northwestern, though. They're not going to get Gronowski. I would be very, if they land Gronowski, then that's just a big shot in the gut. Because, I mean, they've already landed Preston Stone from SMU. And even though Preston Stone hasn't proven himself at the Big Ten level, he did play Power 4 football this year, and he's thrown for a lot of yards. If Gronowski would rather go compete against him than Sullivan and this room, and I think the ceiling is probably lower for Northwestern as it relates to success, probably. If his relationship with Wilde is that that's just interesting. But I don't know that Gronowski took a visit. I was not told where Gronowski would be heading after this. So I'm surprised that Wilde committed this quickly to Northwestern. That tells me that either he was there before coming to Iowa City, or he was there and then took a quick trip out to Evanston, because early in the day, and then 2:00 in the afternoon Central Time, for him to already have announced his commitment. It's interesting how fast this stuff works.
Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is a special edition of Hawkeyes Live. And of course, the Music City Bowl's in the books, and it's headed toward 2025. And the big news is Mark Gronowski and his visit to Iowa City and his forthcoming decision. So, being at the Music City Bowl, and you obviously did the post game. So, folks, if you missed the post game for whatever reason in regards to the analysis of the game itself, certainly that's the place to be. The game's said and done and in the books. But in regards to your takeaway connected to that game of players that are specifically coming back, and you gaining any type of positive vibe, positive indication, or maybe some considerations on the negative side about some position units coming back for 2025 based on what you saw in Nashville. Is there anything that's significant there?
Yes. First of all, let me address a couple. There's a bunch of comments in the portal, or in the chat, that I just want to address. Yes, I know Zach Lujan was the OC at SDSU, and that's the connection to Northwestern. That's why I alluded to Mark Gronowski being a potential target for Northwestern. I understand that. I also understand Wilde had a no contact in the portal. I'm telling you that he was in Iowa City yesterday. That does not matter. Schools don't even. You realize, Mark, school guys can put a no contact on their thing. It means absolutely nothing. First of all, guys get contacted all the time without even being in the portal. So now that they're in the portal, just because they mark no contact, it means nothing. All right? It means absolutely nothing. Anyways, so yes, I understand that. And for the question for Coil Stipulate, or who is it that asked the question? Grant, do you think that the fact that he committed to Northwestern means Gronowski won't go to Iowa? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Obviously, you like those personal connections, but no, I don't think that there's a guarantee there at all. Like I said, I would be surprised if Northwestern, if Gronowski, even with the connection to their OC, if he looks at that situation as a more advantageous situation than Iowa's. But if they do that, then again, that's more of an indictment, I think, on Iowa than anything else. As it relates to what we saw Monday, like I said, I was impressed with Brendan in the first half. I thought they ran the ball really well throughout. I liked Kamari Moulton. I liked the aggression that Jazz Patterson ran with. They got a little bit more action for TJ Washington in the backfield. I thought he played well. Like I said, I continue to be impressed with the development we've seen out of Liddell Betts in his room. He's recruited very well outside of the state. He's developed guys. Everybody's been ready. They've gotten solid production. And we didn't really see anything. I don't even know that Reese Vanderzee had a catch. He was out there. He was back. And so, there's a young guy who showed promise early in the year, but you're also selling to future potential quarterbacks. Hey, here's a guy who's a true freshman, was dinged up in the latter half of the season, then did nothing in the bowl game. So that hurts. Jacob Gill had a critical drop. Mark, I don't know that he's had a drop all year.
I know.
And then he drops one there. It was, he's
3 minutes left.
Oh, yeah. And it would have been a first down. I think it was maybe a third down in that situation, or a second down.
It was a third down. It kicked them off the field.
Yeah, and it would have been maybe a game changer. So you feel bad for Jake because he's been so solid with his hands. And tight end involvement continues to be kind of odd. But Luke Lachey's career is done. I still think their room is really good. Addison Estrenga, like I mentioned, had that pass down the left boundary, ran a nice route, and we've talked about his limited yards per catch, and that helped a little bit to see him go down the field. That was good to see. I'm trying to think of other people. I thought TJ Hall stood his ground. They really didn't target his side of the field a whole lot. It was more so Deshaun Lee's side of the field, and boy, Theo Weiss Jr. was really good, and the other kid, is it Johnson, that went off? Both guys were phenomenal. Theo Weiss got dinged up late, but talk about talented, fast receivers. Even without their best receiver on the field and their best tight end, they were still a handful. And so that just, it makes me think even more so Iowa's got to find another corner. They've got guys to compete, but with losing Jamari Harris, it's like, okay, do you have 2 of the top 5 that are going to be ready to go next year? You'd much rather have somebody that's almost a guarantee, right? Nothing's a guarantee anymore, but something that's a sure thing, like the William and Mary FCS transfer, who's probably just ready to go. He's probably a plug and play guy. You bring him over, and he's steady Eddie, and then you got a bunch of guys competing for one spot. But we thought that was going to be a beneficial thing this year, and that one spot continued to show struggles throughout the season. I thought Xavier Wampa played one of his worst games of his career. Cohen and Tringer missed the game, which really hurt. They bring in Zach Lutmer, who is going to be really good, but has not seen a whole lot of defensive field time. So that hurt. Defensive line didn't get enough pressure on the quarterback. Got a little early. Deontay Craig played well early, but boy, I hate to rip the kid because he was crying during his post-game press conference, just talking about this senior class and what the team means to him. But boy, he made a dumb play on a critical 3rd down stop, and they called the flag on Quinn Schulte, and it was clearly a late hit on Deontay Craig. They called it on the wrong guy, but it was a late hit nonetheless, and it was a killer, cost him 3 points, and that was the difference in the game. So, yeah, just didn't get enough pressure on the quarterback throughout. Brady Cook just stood back there and sliced and diced. And even with their maybe 2 best receivers out in the second half, Mizzou still hurt Iowa through the air. Didn't run the ball all that well, but Iowa's got some problems with pass rush and pass defense as a whole. And then, the Iowa offense just got bottled up, struggled to move the ball. You have the 4th and 1 where Iowa, they missed a call. There was an offsides where a Mizzou player was clearly lined up in the neutral zone. It was missed. But at the same time, why not go with the traditional tush push as opposed to trying to go, Sullivan took the snap and then tried to go left and got stood up, and that was the game. But there were just so many of those plays, like I say, that down the stretch cost them. And it's not all on Brendan Sullivan. He had a couple of bad throws. I think he had, 1 interception, if I'm not mistaken. He was better than Cade McNamara had been. I still think he'd have been the better option if both guys are available and healthy. I think he should have been the guy from day one. But I'm not. You can't. You just cannot limit yourself, and you cannot be satisfied. He needs to be pushed, and maybe he'll end up being the best guy. Every year, fans should want the best guy to win, not the guy who was paid the most money or, is the promised son or some guy that had connections to the program. The best guy, and maybe it's Stratton next year, for all we know. We don't know. At least guys have seen the field. That's positive. And I thought kicking game was really good. But Drew Stevens only got 1 attempt. I was critical, and that was the one question I got to ask Kirk post-game. And I probably shouldn't have phrased it the way I did, because I asked Kirk, do you regret it? And I really didn't intend to ask him that per se. I wanted to ask him, how much did you consider going for the 58-yard field goal in the first half? Because you have the Mizzou kicker, who's been inconsistent all year, break 2 records. He broke 2 Music City Bowl records in the same game for longest kick. And Iowa passed on a 58-yarder and opted to punt on 4th and 2 in the first, and then they passed on another short yardage situation, would have been a 60-yarder, probably go for it in the second. Drew Stevens made the one where they would have had 58 yards in the first half going, I think that was south. There wasn't a lot of wind. I can tell you that. I was on the field pregame. There was not a lot of wind. It's a little different once that ball gets up toward the uprights. But I watched Drew Stevens during halftime warmups make 2 64-yarders with ease. kicks from 64 yards, go in that direction, then made a 64-yarder the other direction. He was 3 of 3 at halftime from 64 yards. So I just, and my one big, 58 sounds really long, and it is, but he's different. It's not long for him. It's just not. He's proven that. And, I hear this phrasing in basketball all the time. You want your best players on the field. We hear that with your offensive line a lot. You want your 5 best guys in the field. Defensive line, you want your 4 best guys in the field. So you can kind of be a little flexible there. And I would say although you don't want to settle for field goals, when it's 50-50 or 33-33-33 for opportunities, choices, put your best guys in the field. Reese Dakin's been really good. Drew Stevens is better. Drew Stevens will get you direct points. Dakin will not. I know the premise of what Kirk wanted to do. He wanted to kick the ball down and get the ball right back on a 3 and out and get better field position. It didn't work out. Hindsight's 20/20, but I questioned it when it happened because Drew Stevens is one of their best players at his respective position. Name a better player on the team. Jay Higgins maybe at linebacker. I don't know. I think Drew Stevens at his position is as elite as they come.
Sure. So
to not give him more of an opportunity, I think it's unfortunate. And then you look back and you're like, hey, they lost by 3. So that is a fair complaint from fans.
The Virginia Tech kicker hit a 60-yarder last night.
Well, and the one thing that I have a problem with, and I even tweeted this out post-game, Mark, when you have, actually I was thinking it was during the game, when you have opportunities to be aggressive in a bowl game, you do it. I just don't believe in, especially in bowl games that people already have downplayed, although Kirk will never. Go big or go home. Why are we punting? What are, like 4th and 2, 4th and what good does it do to punt? I get the premise. I get that it works a lot in the regular season, but why not roll the dice, do something a little different? And I don't think it's that big of a roll of the dice. I think you have probably as good of a chance of converting on 4th and 2 as you do getting a 3 and out with your defense on the next series. So either kick the field goal and let it roll, let it ride for Drew Stevens, let him set a bowl game record, or go for it on 4th and short. And the fact that Kirk is not willing to make that change, that adjustment, that's disappointing. Again, but that's not a Tim Lester decision. That's a Kirk Ferentz decision.
Well, if you're bypassing a 60-yard field goal, that means you're at the opponent's roughly 42, 43-yard line. And if the same defense that you are hoping will pin them down around the 5 or 10-yard line on a 3 and out is the same defense that's going to trot out, even if you don't get the first down, still in plus territory. So you're not putting them in that bad a situation. And if you've got that much confidence in your defense, they should be able to shut it down right there.
And honestly, this defense, without looking at data in front of me, this defense has been better on the plus side of this defense has been better on the minus side of the field than they have been on the plus side of the field. In other words, they have been better. Let me switch that around. I'm getting all confused on myself. They've been better on the opponent's plus side of the field than on the opponent's minus side of the field. In other words, they've bent a lot and stymied up in the red zone when they've needed to. Now, I know you don't want to put the opponent in the red zone, but my point is they've had problems with teams creating long drives all year. Look at the yardage totals for Washington. Look at the yardage totals for Michigan State and UCLA and Missouri. They were struggling. First half, with how good Iowa was offensively, they should have had a 2-score lead. Instead, were they tied? I mean, something close to that 3-point lead at halftime. It's not like the defense now that was earlier, but still, the defense had not proven to be in a place where they were going to flip the field that quickly, and they didn't. And they lost field position anyways. And again, you can't play the regret game, so that was probably the wrong terminology to use in the press conference. But I just believe in a bowl game, even if your philosophy is one thing during the regular season, be willing to adjust in a bowl game. I think there's multiple benefits of doing that. And then at the same time, put your best players on the field. And there's no question, one of your 5 best players is Drew Stevens. Maybe one of your 3 best players is Drew Stevens.
I agree with everything you just said. The only slight difference I would make is that if the goal is to win every game, while you're making these decisions, then why would you make a different decision in bowl play than you would in the regular season?
Well, I don't believe in playing not to win. I don't believe in playing not to lose in general, anyways. So you're probably right. You probably have no reason. Although, again, go against the grain a little bit. The value of a bowl win is nowhere close to the value of a Big Ten win when you're playing in late September, early October. Kirk may think it is, but I don't believe that the quality of win, the value of a bowl win, is nearly what a value of a win at Wisconsin is during the regular season when you're still playing for a championship. It's just not.
When you're still playing for a championship.
Correct. When you're still playing for a championship, 100%.
But after you're out of the championship race,
well,
I think more people are watching you play that game, the bowl game, and there is going to be some significance to beating a ranked team from the SEC. People are going to remember that. Iowa fans are going to remember that they played Missouri 10 years ago in a bowl game.
Well, yeah, some fans will remember that. However, let me say this. I've watched a lot of bowl games. I've watched less here over the last few days because I've been out of town. But there have been, I can count 3 specific egregious examples. All right. And this is anecdotal, but 3. So there's a bit of a sample size there. San Jose State, Pittsburgh, and Iowa. What do all those 3 teams have in common? All of them played not to lose. Every single one of them, their bowl games. Every single one of them lost. Every single one of them was in a close game, played well enough to win. Every single one of them lost. Pat Narduzzi passed up multiple opportunities in short yardage situations. San Jose State was disgraceful. They had an opportunity, yes, on their own side of the field, 4th and 1.5 to end the game, up 3. Just get a yard and a half. The game's over. Instead, what do? They punt off. And the opponent, I don't even know who it was now. Who did San Jose State play? It doesn't matter. It was Ball State or something. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was a MAC team.
Yeah, and they come down the field and go to overtime, but they had chances in overtime to go for it on short yardage. Just go for the win. Nope. Like Pat Narduzzi did, we'd rather kick a field goal from 15 yards, 17 yards, 18 yards than just say, let's go. There was an opportunity, I think it was in the San Jose State team or game to, remember I talked about this, Mark? There was a procedural penalty. They would have had the ball at the 1.5 yard line with a chance to go for 2 and win, and they kicked the extra point. I just think it's just, it makes me angry watching. And then when I see the end result, I'm like, you ought to be, like Pat Narduzzi, I said it right after, like that kid, that quarterback ought to transfer later that day. Because he put on a show. That dude had not played at all. And I'd love for him to enter the portal and for Iowa to go after him. He's a lefty. He's got great legs, got a nice arm. I don't know. He wasn't recruited very highly. I looked up his recruiting page, and now I don't remember his name. Was it Jackson, Mark?
I don't remember his name.
Did you watch that?
I did not watch the game.
Okay.
I have to go back and look.
I don't like Narduzzi. The more I watch him, I just have grown to dislike him over the years for so many different reasons, whether he was at Penn State or he's at Mississippi State. Wasn't he at Akron for a while?
Michigan State.
Michigan State. What did I say?
That's where you said Penn State. That's where he gained his acclaim.
Michigan
State.
Michigan
State being Mark D'Antonio's defensive coordinator.
Who am I thinking? I'm thinking of Moorhead. I'm confusing him with Moorhead, but I've never liked either one of them. Moorhead's the one that was at Mississippi State and then at Akron. Yeah.
Yeah. San Jose State, by the way, lost to South Florida.
That's right. South Florida. Yeah.
I'll just say this, that when analytics became prevalent, and you'll hear announcers, usually the color analysts, because they're former players, really dog the analytics and say the analytics don't understand that it's windy. The analytics don't understand that the momentum's going this way. Yes, you still coach with a feel. You still use your brain and don't have a card just tell you what to do. Absolutely. But what the analytics have done is more than anything else. They initially pointed out that once you cross the 50-yard line, that continually putting pressure on a defense by making it a 4-down game and not a 3-down game is enormous. Because when it's 4th and 2, your odds of making a first down, first of all, are like 75 or 80%. And that there are only so many possessions in a football game. And for you just to arbitrarily, automatically punt because it's 4th and 1, when Most kicking situations in college football are nothing close to what we've seen at Iowa over the last umpteen years, and especially the last 5 or 10, where you're going to kick it out at the 4-yard line, then you bring on an elite defense to pin them down there. That's not happening elsewhere in college football. What's happening is the majority of time, they kick it into the end zone. It comes out to the 20. You only gained 18 yards and you gave up possession of the football. And that's what the analytics have brought to light. I remember hearing a defensive coordinator in the NFL say a long time ago, he said, the worst thing is for there to be 2 minutes left on the clock and I'm defending a 4-point lead, because what happens is they know they have to score a touchdown. So it's 4-down territory all the time, as opposed to, you know what, when we've got a 3-point lead, I know that the mindset, and it's changing, but the mindset was just as soon as we get in field goal range, stop. Let's
Yep.
We're afraid we're going to throw an interception. We're afraid we're going to do something wrong. And so I've heard defensive coordinators say, I love having a 3-point lead because I know we're either going to stop them and win the game, or they're not going to go for the touchdown. They're going to get scared in the red zone, just kick a field goal, run the ball in the middle. Let's go to overtime. And best example of this, and then I'll get off of this and we'll go back to Iowa and answer Erica's question or comment. Herman Edwards, great motivator, inspirational speaker, seems like a good guy, all those things. Terrible game manager as a head coach. Head coach of the New York Jets. They're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs, the 2003 NFL playoffs. He's got a quarterback who has not thrown a red zone interception in his career. Chad Pennington's been playing forever. That's how protective he is of the football in his career. He's got a running back, Curtis Martin, who had the longest streak of without a fumble in the NFL. He had like 2 of the most reliable players running the offense, and they're moving the ball down the field like it's nothing, just slicing the defense from like their own 15-yard line. As soon as he gets to the fringe of field goal range, buttons up, locks it down. We can't throw. We're not running. We're not, and locks it down. It's like 18 degrees outside, howling winds, the whole thing. What do you think happens? He's trying to kick like a 49-yard field goal in horrible Pittsburgh weather in the middle of January. They miss the field goal, lose the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's anecdotal, right? There's plenty of, there's situations where Iowa has many situations where Kirk has played his field position game and they win a lot. So I get it. I just think there has to be a different standard for bowl games now. And by the way, for bowl mania people that downplay bowl games, Mark, can we agree that this bowl season has been nuts?
Oh, it's been great.
I mean, like, I'm not just talking about the playoffs, because I know the first round of the playoffs were really to that point, those were the only unentertaining games. All the other games were great. I mean, let me run through some of these point differentials. North Texas wins the First Responder Bowl by 2. Kansas State comes back in a furious comeback over Rutgers, wins by 3. Arkansas State wins by 1 score over Bowling Green in the 68 Ventures Bowl. You have 5 overtimes. South Florida beats San Jose State. You have 2 overtimes. Northern Illinois beats Fresno State. You have a 5-point win for Sam Houston over Georgia Southern, a 7-point win over Western Michigan by South Alabama. You have a 5-point win by Memphis over West Virginia, another phenomenal game that ended on a wild final play, right? Where a guy's getting a game-clinching interception and then starts running the other way. All you got to do is get down. He fumbles the ball, but because he started the slide, the officials ended up calling him down. That was incredible. You have a 4-point comeback, a win for USC over A&M, a game A&M had no business losing. They were up 17. You have, let's see here, Vanderbilt wins by 1 score over Georgia Tech. You have a 1-point win by Navy over Oklahoma. Mizzou comes back from double digits down to beat Iowa by a field goal. East Carolina, they had a fight. You got a ref that gets, I don't like fights, but the ref gets hit in the face because of a punch between those two teams. It's a 5-point win for the Pirates.
See that.
Yeah, the ref's sitting there bleeding off his face. You have Iowa State. What a win over Cam Ward benches himself at halftime. They win by 1, 42-41. No defense played there. You have Nebraska, Boston College. You have some some weird stuff go on in that game. Boston College, didn't they score 2 touchdowns off special teams?
Yeah.
and
Plus, they had a blocked PAT that they ran back for 2 points.
incredible. They lose by 5. And let's see, Ohio over Jackson State by 3. You've got everything that happened in overtime with Tennessee with Texas and
Arizona State.
Arizona
That was a
State.
great game.
Incredible.
Arizona State outplayed them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just that's all, and I'm skipping some games that were entertaining that maybe weren't quite as close. You have the Frank Beamer Bielema stuff that ended in a 3-point win for the Illini.
That, in addition to it just being a really good game, the intensity in that stadium, that felt like a rivalry or a playoff game or a major bowl game. That was tremendous. I loved watching that game with our guy Brett Bielema.
You have the upset win over Alabama by Michigan. You have a 1-point win by Louisville over Washington.
I did not see any of that.
I mean, that's a lot. I'm going through a lot of bowl games, Mark, and that, like, all the overtime periods and all the craziness. That's fun stuff. And those it's not like these teams aren't trying. Some of them are maybe guys that there were a lot of opt-outs, but the guys that are playing hard.
Yes, they are playing hard.
And that's fun to watch. That's why I love bowl season.
Oh, it's great. And seeing teams that never play, I love that. And the game that was supposed to be like epic is, of course, supposed to be possibly the 2 best teams in the country, Ohio State and Oregon. That turned out to be a dog, 34 zip in the second quarter.
Isn't that something? And Oregon outscored. I've been gone, so I haven't watched a lot of these games, but Oregon, they outscored them like 24-7 in the last couple periods, but it didn't matter.
21-7. Yeah.
21-7. But you can't dig yourself a 34-point lead or a deficit. And I was shocked when I saw that. I was absolutely shocked. And, I told you I wouldn't have been surprised had Tennessee beaten Ohio State. And boy, here's the other thing. All 4, and I know that the seeding needs to change. The premise of the seeds needs to change, but the 4 teams that got byes all lost.
Yeah.
So that's wild. Now you have no teams that have the advantage of a bye. So I'll be interested to talk to Coach Patterson because he really felt, again, 1 year, but
exactly.
He really played up that it's a big advantage to have a bye week, but it did not turn out that way this year.
And not that we shouldn't be trying to seed it correctly, but this is showing that the best teams are going to play right through it, I guess. Is that what that's
yeah. And so perhaps, by the way, we just got word here 17 minutes ago, South Dakota State running back Angel Johnson has committed to Wazoo. He's a 1,200-yard rusher and was considered the best running back in the portal, according to On3. So you see some of these South Dakota State guys off the board. Wilde to Northwestern. And for the record, I'm not saying that Iowa was targeting Johnson, but there's another skill player for Iowa or for South Dakota State that's heading to Jimmy Rogers' home, new home. And by the way, let me just add something else. It has not been announced yet, but I tweeted out here a few days ago that the younger brother of Drew Stevens, who's a really, really solid prospect, I don't know if he was handling kickoffs for South Dakota State this year. He's a true freshman at South Dakota State, but he entered the portal with a no contact tag. And I know what people immediately said, he's a Hawkeye. They just lost Trip Woody. By the way, I'll just say this. Syracuse tampered with Trip Woody. Syracuse tampered with Iowa's backup kicker and got him to enter the portal and head to Syracuse. Now, I've been told by some reliable sources that I don't think Iowa was real upset that Syracuse tampered. I think they were okay with that. But that's happening. They literally tampered Trip Woody, and within like a day, he was gone. He was committed to Syracuse. So anyways, but regardless, so Trip Woody's gone. So everybody's like, well, that means that this Jack Stevens kid, who's the younger brother of Drew, who's been up at South Dakota State, is going to head to Iowa because he had a no contact tag. He entered the portal. I tweeted that out here a few days ago. He's headed to Wazoo as well. Okay. So for the record, he's headed to Wazoo. He's not coming to Iowa. Iowa's not offered him a full scholarship. Wazoo's got scholarships to hand out. And frankly, why would you come to Iowa to have to pay for school for a year? He could transfer to Iowa next year. Once Drew's gone, maybe he ends up at Iowa and have a scholarship for him. But Iowa's also going to need another kicker. They're looking right now. So anyways, just a lot of stuff going on.
Erica, super chat. Thank you so much for that. At the end of the day, this all falls on Kirk Ferentz. He's stubborn and held on to Brian too long. People negatively recruit against Iowa because of KF's age. Appreciate all he's done, but I hope it's KF's last season.
You know what? I'm not calling for Kirk to be fired right this moment because you can't fire a guy. You don't fire a guy after an 8-win season in the Big Ten. You can't do that. You don't do that, especially a Hall of, very close to being a Hall of Famer. Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. But not at Iowa. You can't do that. And I'm not advocating for it. However, right now, I am as close to being satisfied and content with both head coaches for men's basketball and football being done after this year as I've ever been. And again, I'm not calling right now for both of them to be fired, but I've said it for men's basketball. I know it's a football show, but if Fran doesn't get this team to the second weekend this year, then I don't know that he should be back next year. And if he doesn't make the tournament this year, see you later. I think I echo the feelings of a lot of people. What they did last night was a disgrace. I don't know if you saw maybe me tweet about that, Mark, but they lost 116-85 at Wisconsin. They gave up 116 points. That was a Kohl Center record. That's 4 away from the all-time program record for points scored for Wisconsin. That was in 1967 against Southern Methodist. That was embarrassing, as Coach Close said, and it's a microcosm of the ceiling that has been placed on this program by Fran McCaffery. And although he's moved them to 20-plus win seasons and 2 tournament appearances, this would be 2 straight years of missing out on the tournament. And the things that are constantly problems don't get any better. So like I say, you don't fire him midseason. And I'm not saying you fire him at all, but you move on. If he doesn't make the tournament, you have to move on. They're not to that point with Kirk because they haven't, it's different. It's just a different situation. But as I've said before, the schedule gets a lot more difficult. And if they don't add a Gronowski, and I still think that, for the record, we haven't heard any news on that, could come at any time. If they don't add Gronowski, then I do think there's reason for serious concern. I'm not saying Kirk's going to decide, hey, I'm done. I don't think he'd probably do that. But boy, that schedule's tough. Boy, they lose a lot. It was a luxury getting Logan Jones back. It's going to be a luxury getting who am I missing? Who am I missing here, Mark? Who's the other guy that announced? Ethan Hurkett back.
And
that helps him.
Jennings Dunker, right?
Jennings Dunker is back. Yep. And they're going to have Bo Stevens back. They have some pieces up front, but they're also losing a lot at linebacker. They're losing their best corner. They're losing their left tackle, who's been a starter for 3-4 years. So I am as close to in full agreement with you, Eric, as I've ever been. And I think it's unsteady ground that we're walking on. If there should be some nervousness around that program right now, given what's ahead. And it's also an exciting time, though. Like what's happening with basketball, I know there's a lot of apathetic fans, but when things get to this point, you also have to think, hey, what could maybe be exciting and change here in the next year? And I think we're as close to that as we've been in at least the last 15 years since Fran got here.
Well, of course, too many schedule breakdowns during the off season. I was just looking at it, trying to determine how much more difficult it is this season. There are no Ohio State, Michigan. Those 2 are off the schedule, but it's pretty difficult. Oregon, Penn State, USC.
I would guess Michigan's going to be better than they were this year. They've already shown signs of turning the corner. I don't have a lot of admiration for Sharon Moore, but I mean, you got to give him credit where credit's due. They said their 2 best wins in their last 2 games. So, not a whole lot better than beating, as far as Blue Bloods, beating Ohio State and Alabama back-to-back, both away from home. That's pretty darn impressive. So they're going to be better. I'm sure Penn State's going to be really good again. Ohio State's going to be really good again. I think Ryan Day is fully off the hot seat if he was ever on one. Now, if they lose in the semis, Mark, there are going to be fans that are still calling for him to be fired.
Especially since they're supposed to win now. Everybody's expecting them to win the national championship.
And, USC will probably be better. I just can't imagine that they continue to struggle, but I don't know. And who knows what Deshaun Foster is going to do at UCLA. I think you and I both feel like that's a program that has a ceiling higher than what we've seen in a while. And I would say the same thing about Washington here in the national championship a year ago. So that conference is going to be loaded, and we're not even talking about what will Minnesota do with PJ, what will Wisconsin do with Luke Fickell. Go down the laundry list there.
And I am going to reserve official judgment until all the games are played, but I think we're headed toward being able to call this conference the best in college football.
Yeah, part of me does not want to see an all Big Ten national game because I almost feel like that certain SEC people will still make that out to be like, well, as a fluke. And so they're both in there. So one of them, they can't both lose. I don't know. They earned it. They earned their way there if they get there. But and these haven't been close games, as you brought up. I mean, now Oregon and Ohio State was unfortunate. Oregon didn't play well. Ohio State played really well. But Oregon's another team. They're going to be good next year. I don't know who's their quarterback. Do they add anybody in the portal?
They have not.
I wonder who's going to be playing quarterback for them next year. It'd be interesting to see where they head. They got a lot of talent coming back, but Dylan Gabriel's been the key cog in all that.
Absolutely. Folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We typically do this on Tuesday at 4:30 Central with Corey. And, of course, the men's and women's basketball is there at from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So what is coming up next?
Well, first of all, we've got women's basketball tomorrow against number 8 Maryland. Big game in Carver. So that'll commence at, I believe, 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. So we'll have live post-game coverage after that game, number 23 versus number 8. Maybe the biggest test for both teams to this point. And let's see. Fans need to get over to the channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm and subscribe. We're 17 subscribers away from 10K.
Wow.
So maybe we'll hit that by the end of the week. I think we got a good shot of doing that. I guess it is Saturday already. But maybe after tomorrow's show with the women, we'll get 17 new subscribers. So published a cut up from last night's show with Coach Close. If people want to just hear what Coach Close had to say about the embarrassing loss, those are his words. He's usually very diplomatic, but he called it an embarrassment. And so that video is up, and also did a reaction to the news of Mr. Gronowski being in Iowa City. That's up on the channel. And, we can go back and watch the post-game coverage if you haven't seen it with Coach Patterson from Monday after the Music City Bowl. And also have reaction if you missed my takeaways from the Big Ten Plus game for the women against Penn State on New Year's Day. So plenty of stuff, and then, plenty coming down the road. And but yeah, once we hit 10K, we'll have to figure out some way to celebrate that. Maybe it'll be a show with Coach Patterson. He's been the longest tenured coach that's been involved with coverage here. So I know he wants to do a show that kind of wants to run analytics for the playoffs and national championship games. So if we can get to 10K before at least the national championship. When are the national semifinals?
Next Thursday and Friday.
Okay, we should hit 10K by then.
Okay.
17 subs. We can do that.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we got 170 some people here. Mark, do you think there's at least 17 people of that group that have not subscribed to my channel?
I'm sure there are 17 that have not subscribed to this channel, let alone your channel. So we peaked at over 200. So folks, from the Hawkeye of the Storm, please subscribe. It should be obvious as to why you would want to subscribe and support the channel. We know you can watch the videos without subscribing. However, it's a commitment that costs no money, and it just shows YouTube that you're invested in the product. So we would appreciate that.
You want to hit this last super chat as well, Mark? Did we get all the super chats covered?
Coming in from
D. Rolifson.
D. Rolifson, thank you so much for the contribution. Other than $20 million, how do we become Ohio State?
You sure he doesn't mean Okie State?
Yeah, Oregon State. Who?
Oregon State, yeah. We can become Oregon State and join the Mountain West. How about that? Oh, they're not in the Mountain. Are they in the Mountain West now? I forget what they're.
No, they're in the Pac-12.
They're technically still Pac-12. And see, it's interesting because it confuses me. They're in basketball. They're in the WCC. They're in the West Coast Conference.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what the long-term thing is for that. And now what's the latest real quick before I know we got to go, but Northern Illinois is joining the Mountain West as football only.
Yes, in 2026.
Interesting. That's an interesting. I mean, they've been a solid MAC program, but that's just an interesting add to me. DeKalb, Illinois.
Yeah, there's obviously some kind of financial benefit to them to move on in football, even though they're completely detached geographically from the rest of the conference. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, we will see you every Tuesday here at 4:30 Central. And
Mark.
remember to watch what you miss. So most of you folks have jumped on the line here in the last 10 or 15 minutes. You can go back and watch what you missed right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you next time.